Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central.
I knew that there was a place for me to play that music, and there it was. Celebrating 10 years of award-winning car talk, this is the In Wheel Time car show, your weekly go-to, all things automotive place. Coming up, we got this week's events calendar. Konrad has his week in auto history. Not his week, but the week in auto history.
The week?
Konrad has this week in auto history. Okay. We're going to get you updated on the stories making car news this week as well. Howdy, along with Mike out of this world, Mars. We need more Jeff Zekin. And King Konrad DeLong, I'm Don Armstrong. So glad you could join us on this Saturday. And
you want me to get that? I'll get that.
Get that, would you? You don't mind? Mm-hmm. So we were going to have a guest on.
Yeah,
he's here.
We're working on it hard, boss.
Okay. Because we're going to talk about smart roads.
Cool.
And believe me, today they're pretty dumb.
Ooh. Roads?
Roads.
Well, yeah, it's just asphalt and concrete.
Uh-huh.
Dirt.
But for a car that is semi-autonomous or is going to be autonomous eventually, well, they're actually making cars now that are completely autonomous. I mean, they drive themselves. Mm-hmm. You have to have a little bit of infrastructure. You know?
A whole lot.
A whole lot. A whole lot more than most people would think. So,
we'll talk to him about it. But that infrastructure is the cars talking to the cars around them, and the cars talking to the road as well.
Let's just find out about it. And his name is Jamie Sullivan. He's vice president of a company called DERQ and Smart Roads Technology. Jamie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Very well, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. And so, tell me, first of all, Jamie, what is DERQ?
So DERQ is a software solution that basically provides the messaging between, infrastructure and vehicle or infrastructure and pedestrian to notify of entities of a potential collision, right? So, if you got a newer car, there's onboard sensors that tell you what lane to be in and when to stop and those kinds of things. To get to, the highest level of autonomy, you really have to have vehicles talking to pedestrians and infrastructure, and that's where DERQ comes in. We're the software that does that.
Does DERQ stand for something?
No, it's just it's one of those four-letter terms that is unique and it's not used anywhere else. So it's just it's easy to remember from a website perspective. That's really it.
DERQ.
So you said that the infrastructure needs to talk to the pedestrians as well.
Correct. Pedestrians and vehicles, really. So they call this vehicle to everything, right? So once you have those lines of communication going between, right now it's vehicle sensing what's going on in front of it.
Right.
But vehicles can't see around other vehicles, can't see around corners, can't predict pedestrians jumping out into the middle of the road, somebody chasing a kid down or something like that. DERQ does that, and that's kind of the glue that's really going to take us beyond these headlines where autonomous vehicles are still hitting people and having fatalities and those kinds of things. The other thing that DERQ does is the analytics perspective. So, understanding existing infrastructure to determine whether roads are safe for just normal, everyday travel, but also whether they're prepared for this next step to make that leap to connected vehicle, autonomous vehicle.
So as you're talking about the system communicating with the pedestrian, does that mean that the pedestrian will have to have some kind of a device on them, even if it's just their phone that integrates into the system, but so that you're going to be able to see the movement and the motion of the pedestrian, or is it going to be a specific piece?
Well, today it's really going to be more of a kind of a warning system, really, for pedestrians, right? So it's going to have to be, just kind of an awareness kind of thing for pedestrians that, hey, there's traffic moving in and about here. People more and more so are spending too much time staring at their phones and while they're walking down the street, et cetera, and walking into things and whatnot. So just those kinds of things where where we can predict and sense that somebody is going to, make a mistake, that there's some type of a warning system. And some of these things haven't fully been vetted out and worked out yet, but, there's the technology exists to do these things. But, what the complete path is going to be is yet to be determined. But cell phones will play a role at some point.
Yeah, for me, that warning system is my horn, except people give me a bad look when I honk my horn at them.
Yeah. No,
or you can get killed honking your horn today.
Yeah. Road rage.
So,
yes, exactly.
Tell me about this. I guess it's kind of a trial basis thing you got going on in Dubai and somewhere in Ohio.
Yeah. So we've got a number of deployments going with auto manufacturers as well as shuttle manufacturers to really if you've ever been on an autonomous shuttle, they don't go very fast, which is a complaint of riders. And two, if they do have to make emergency stops, even only going a few miles an hour, they can still throw you around quite a bit. But what we're doing in Dubai is a project where we're using the infrastructure to communicate with the shuttle to warn it of potential collisions or obstructions in the road or pedestrians stepping off the curb, so that the shuttle comes to a more gradual stop, right? So it doesn't jerk and throw people around. The other thing it'll enable the shuttle to do is to move faster, and that's a big complaint. There's a lot of people that have deployed shuttles that are not happy with them because, one, they don't go very fast, and two, they essentially have to close down a whole lane of traffic for wherever the shuttle's going because they don't want anybody else interfering with the shuttle, and that's not efficient. We're not going to get very far if we're closing down lanes of traffic for kind of one-off technologies that really nobody's using.
Which compounds the problem of traffic when you take a lane away.
Jamie, let me ask you, in these autonomous vehicles, do people stand up or do they sit down?
Both. So, I mean, depending on the shuttle, what the accommodations are, and that, I think they're more and more telling people that they should probably sit. But, very often if it's, what they're doing is where they're using a lot of these shuttles is to get to like last mile to, a rapid transit, some type of a train or public transportation, right? So sometimes they can get overcrowded and, there'll be people standing, right? So if there are, they've got to be accommodating to that, and sometimes they're not, and people can get thrown around, right? But there's enough infrastructure out there where there's sensors that can determine what's going on, that we can predict a lot of these potential collisions and really make the shuttles run better.
And would DERQ integrate with, you're talking about existing infrastructure, the camera systems that we see in so many of these metropolitan areas that can, it can see people in the cameras. Now, would DERQ gather that data as well for traffic?
Yes, that's primarily our source of data. We take those raw camera feeds that are being used for surveillance or detection or just what have you, and what we see in the camera is how we detect and predict and what's going to happen, right? And we do that real time with some edge computing capabilities. And so those cameras are great because that's essentially the best source of the data that we need to actually make these things happen. We can use radar and thermal cameras and some other things. LIDAR is coming onto the scene. LIDAR is more what you have in your vehicle, but and some of these things are expensive. But cameras are one, relatively inexpensive. Two, they're everywhere, right? So for the time being, cameras are probably the best source of that data. And so essentially we can use those existing cameras or new cameras, and we don't we're pretty good with whatever the feed is.
And would DERQ also integrate with the traffic control systems, the red light, green light stuff, to kind of help manage flow, not just the autonomous vehicle flow, but the general flow?
Yeah, so what you're going to see here in the next, probably in 2022, is a lot of pilots and projects kicking off where we're actually communicating with the controller, and we're predicting somebody's going to run a red light, and we're going to tell the controller, hey, do something, either turn all phases red or extend the green, for that idiot that's going to run the red light, and really make it a safer intersection, right? So we're interfacing with the controller to provide the controller some intelligence to make better decisions, right? Because everybody thinks if you pull up to an intersection and it detects that you're there, that's a really smart system. Well, it is in a sense, but it's really not, right? Because all it can do is detect that there's a vehicle there, and it goes through a timer to start the switch and get you a green arrow faster. But that's really all it's doing. So what we're gonna do is provide some added intelligence to let the controllers to make decisions whether if there's still a pedestrian in the crosswalk and the phase turns green, that's not a good thing, right? So you got to clear the crosswalks. You got to get the red light runners out of the way and those kinds of things. And that's a lot of what you're going to see in the next 12 months.
What is the purpose in you guys spreading out all over the world? Dubai, Ohio, Vienna, Austria. Why so many different locations to test all this?
Well, so there's, here in the U.S., there's probably only about a dozen or so states that are being aggressive and wanted to take care of this. So the state governors will declare that they're open for business for connected and autonomous pilots, practices, deployments. Not every state is embracing of the technology. There's a number of states that are going to wait. Europe is a little bit farther ahead, and some other parts of the world. Dubai is a tourism mecca, right? So they want to have these types of unique things there to attract people to come. But the places that are more progressive in terms of using the technology to solve problems, those are the areas where naturally they're going to try this technology out. And we have to take those steps to get through the iterations to get to a finished product, right? So what we're doing is great today, but there's so much more we can do once some newer technology and more infrastructure is out there.
Well, I would think that Las Vegas would be a perfect place to test this stuff out. Have you worked with them in the past at all, or do you have any plans to go out there and work on your software solutions there?
Yeah, so we've done some pilots in the Las Vegas region, and we're deploying actually. There's a company, Motional, that's a joint venture between Aptiv and Hyundai. That's deploying autonomous vehicles in the Vegas region, and we've deployed a couple of intersections where they're relying on onboard sensors, but now by using the infrastructure, it's a redundant safety system, right? So we can kind of they can validate what they're seeing from the vehicle side to what we're seeing from the infrastructure side. So it's just that extra added safety system, so that an autonomous vehicle doesn't blow through a red light or be confused by the moon, right? As to whether that's a stoplight, as you saw some of those things in the news, and so forth. So, so there's some things we're doing in Vegas and hopefully a lot more, and certainly some other locations as well.
Is there a human element involved in this vehicle? Is there someone there to push the stop button in case it needs to be pushed?
Yeah, so there's always right now some type of a human element that they can view the onboard camera systems and that to make sure everything's operating as normal. Yeah, so there's always right now there's a fail-safe switch for from the vehicle side, right? But at some point as you get more and more of these autonomous and connected vehicles deployed, there's just not enough humans or eyes to watch them, right? So if you think about all the surveillance cameras in a big city. London is an example. I think it has 500,000 cameras in the city, but they don't have eyes to watch all those cameras. So they rely on analytics and things like that to help them detect events. And it'll be the same thing with autonomous vehicles.
And you mentioned Hyundai. What other manufacturers are actively engaging your technology to integrate into their systems or allow you to integrate with them?
So I'm really not at liberty to speak about some of those things, but I would say, half of the major OEMs, the auto manufacturers and their partners are all engaged with us to do projects in that. Yeah.
Yeah. We want to raise our hand and have you guys look at Texas. How do we get Texas to reach out to you and say, hey, come on over here?
Yeah, so we just actually signed up a partner that's based in Texas, a company called AM Signal that does a lot of the distribution legwork and building these systems for the Texas Department of Transportation, the city of Dallas, et cetera. So we'll actually be in Dallas in January doing some things. So we'll be happy to reach out to you guys, let you know when we're there. But Texas is definitely one of those states that is going to be embracing this technology. So. The good news is that it's, you're seeing it in just small pockets today, but they're definitely on a path where they're going to be doing this.
Dallas in January. Great. You're hoping for Cowboys home games, I assume.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Where are you based?
So I'm in outside of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Beautiful country.
Yeah, we love it up there, and I know that you do too. Yeah.
Also, a lot of technology support from the universities around you, I assume.
Yeah, so the universities in the U.S. are definitely developing programs to turn out the talent, right, to help drive and operate these systems. And this was a big challenge, for this country in terms of data science. It's the reason why we had to bring people from other countries to do the data science work here. So now the universities have finally gotten on board, and more universities are churning out data science degrees that will have the talent here in the U.S. to kind of help drive these things, because that's essentially what it's going to take. Because a lot of these DOTs and agencies, cities, et cetera, just don't have the talent right now to build and operate these systems. So they're relying on vendors. But, that'll change over the next few years.
They barely have talent enough to fix the potholes. I'm sorry.
Well, interesting enough, that's part, some of this, the analytics, that's not what we do, but there are companies in the transportation space now running analytics that they're crowdsourcing, the detection of those potholes to let the agencies know, hey, you got one that you need to fix. So there's technology out there to do it.
14 guys show up and spend 3 days fixing a 3x3 pothole.
Jamie, so how did you get into this? What is your background?
So I've spent 20 plus years in government technology, big companies, AT&T, GE, Motorola, being the guy that kind of drives some of the startups within big corporations, new technologies, bleeding edge kinds of stuff. My background is a sales background, but I've got an MBA with a focus on information systems. So I'm just smart enough to be dangerous, is really what it comes down to. So, I got married up with DERQ a few years ago, and it's been, coming from working in big companies, it's very refreshing to work in a startup because you just have so much more control of what you're doing, as opposed to being driven by a large, corporation culture and those kinds of things.
The politics
of
corporate, the politics.
Yeah, politics, but also it's you see it's a challenge because we work with big companies and you see how they struggle with innovation because there's so much process that goes into before they can make a decision that it's very hard for them to be on the bleeding edge.
Well, I was going to say this is cutting edge stuff, especially when it comes to autonomous vehicles and what a great job you have. We're all envious. We want to be on the cutting edge too. So we hope that we can partner up with you and continue on our relationship with you so you can keep us up to date on what's coming up with autonomous.
Absolutely, guys. I always enjoy the visit and talk to you guys anytime, and we'll let you know when we're in Dallas.
Jamie, thanks so much. We appreciate you.
Beautiful.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Interesting. That's pretty cool to be able to talk to people who are seeing the future and developing the future today.
I know.
Yeah.
And he's a relatively young man. Mm-hmm. And
everybody is.
Oh, Mike is on a roll today. Oh, my goodness.
Okay. Well, let's
Goodbye,
see.
Mike.
You
Mike.
had to be here before
There's
the
the
show.
button for Mike. Now he's no longer on the
Mike
air with
was
us.
snapping
But again-
them off one minute at a time.
And as they're rolling this into more and more cities, it was interesting to hear him say they're coming to Dallas, because I know there's some other, and it might not be DERQ, but there's some other programs that are operating in Austin. And I don't know, my head would have thought Austin would have been a great location for it because of center of government, technology opportunities in Austin and stuff.
Tesla,
and all of that integration there. But I guess Dallas works as well, considering Toyota's in Dallas.
Well, not only that, but it goes into, they use so much of the existing
technology
and infrastructure with the cameras and things like that. They're not going in and stringing new lines and stringing new cameras. I mean, that would it's not cost effective.
No.
So they've got to use what's there. So
Well, here's the other thing, too, to that point, is that Dallas has always kicked Houston's butt when it comes to public transportation. And look at their train system.
True.
And look at our train system that goes nowhere.
So I wonder.
Also, there's.
I wonder if they could send themselves their own red light ticket on the autonomous vehicle. Hey, my autonomous vehicle ran
and
a
then
red
protest the ticket.
Dallas is, that's right. That's right.
Where you said Plano, did you say Plano or North Dallas? That is sort of like the Silicon Valley of Texas. Up in that
It's
area.
becoming that way.
Oh, yes.
But I think that they're going to have a big fight on their hands when it comes to Austin, because Austin is where the big companies are moving to also.
Well, you got to remember,
it
Plano is where EDS was
Right,
structured.
right.
But doesn't exist anymore.
Didn't there was a lot of General Motors offshoots up there in that area too.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff up there, but I mean, everybody, like you say, looks at Austin because of the government aspects of it, but Austin's infrastructure still sucks. I mean, after all these years.
Absolutely.
The worst roads in the entire state.
Exactly.
They have.
There's no organization to how the road passes through the city either.
It just grew so fast, that they couldn't keep up, and they were just trying to make do. I mean, and they didn't do a very good job of it.
Yeah, they made doo-doo is what they did, because
Somebody's gonna get
the
most
confusing city.
And they're going to get their feelings hurt when they start changing it.
All right, let's switch gears and do This Week in Auto History.
All right.
Shall we? Are you ready?
You got little print or big print?
Do you have big print on this?
Yeah, and I have big print
okay,
on this.
beautiful.
Large font.
Okay, that's all yours.
Now, this first one I have a personal interest in because
Must be an Oldsmobile.
my grandfather was a surveyor for the city of New York. And the Holland Tunnel, which was the under the Hudson River tunnel between New York and Jersey City, Jersey, officially opened this week in 1927. The double-tubed underwater tunnel, the first of its kind in the United States, was built to accommodate nearly 2,000 vehicles per hour.
It's kind of small. It's a little hole they got there.
Well, that's one of the tunnels that they had built.
Okay.
And my grandfather was a surveyor. He was surveying coming in from the Jersey side, coming into the New York side, and they actually met.
I was going to say that they did.
They met, and he said when they met together, they were within the width of a dime.
Nice.
Wow. They're pretty high
That
tech
is
stuff. Cool. One of the cool things about this is you got to think that 1.5 mile long tunnel underneath the river. How do you exchange the air with so many cars going through it? And they developed a ventilation system that will change the air in the tunnel 30 times an hour, pushing 3 million cubic feet of air per minute.
Did they have parakeets down there?
Please continue on.
In 1940, Willys Overland completes the original Jeep prototype for the U.S. Army. And you got to remember that first...
What year was that?
1940 was when the first prototype was completed. And then it was built by both Willys, it was built by Ford, also built a version of this, and Bantam built a version of this. It was all the same truck. And over the period of World War II, they built over 600,000 of these Jeeps.
And there's only a handful that are still existing.
Wow.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more than a handful, but yeah, a lot of them were just destroyed in the war.
Very utilitarian with all this.
And it's 4-wheel drive. It was pretty advanced for its day. In 1945, Tony Hallman purchased the Indianapolis Motor Speedway from Eddie Rickenbacker, the Air Force.
Really?
The
Ace.
The Air Force Ace.
I did not know.
So Eddie Rickenbacker owned Indianapolis 500, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and Holman bought it for $750,000 in 1945. The Speedway was in deplorable condition because since 1941 it hadn't been used because of World War II. Rickenbacker was considering tearing the facility down and just selling the land, and Holman jumped in and look at what it is today.
What did Penske pay for it,
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't know. In 1965, this week, brothers Bill and Bob Summers set the world land speed record at 409 miles an hour in the Goldenrod. Now, this is a wheel-driven land speed car that actually had a Hemi in it. It was Hemi-powered, and the Summers brothers thought that using jet engines was cheating. So Gabelich, Arfons, Breedlove, they thought those guys were all cheating using jet engines. They thought real speed record cars had to be wheel-driven vehicles. And then in 1977, at the Mahwah plant in New York, workers completed the 100 millionth Ford built in the United States. It was a 1978 Ford Fairmont four-door.
There was no picture on that.
There was, but okay, no big deal. And then also in 1998, I know there's no picture for this, 1998 is when Daimler-Benz completed its merger with Chrysler to form Daimler Chrysler. And then it
disaster.
and then it was Cerebus, and now it's FCA, and...
No, it was SCA. Now it's Stellantis.
So it's kind of gone through iterations.
Well,
and that's This Week in Automotive History.
All right, thank you, sir. Time now for some of the stories making auto news headlines, and we always like to start off with the recalls, and this is always entertaining. The Volkswagen ID4 missing a drive bushing may cause steering loss.
Uh-oh.
Not good. Improperly tightened brake pipe nut.
Yep. That's the metallized hose lines of a brake system.
On the Volkswagen Tiguan for 2022. It's brand new. Take it back. Incorrect front disc brakes installed on the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, which is a van. 2020
Usually says
model
Amazon on the side of it, too.
On the Mercedes AMG GLB 35, the window airbag has been mounted incorrectly.
Oh.
So you'd be
And the Kia Stinger for 2020 and 2021 has an inaccurate fuel gauge reading.
No. Do you ever get a Stinger to drive?
I think, Mars, did we get a Stinger
One
to
of y'all
drive?
had one.
They had an event in Austin, but
Cool
we
little car.
never got one out into the press seat that I ever saw.
Very nice. I really like the look of that car.
Now, all of these recalls, are those unionized?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I doubt it.
So you heard General Motors reopened the Hamtramck plant and called it Factory Zero, which is where Biden went this week with all the
Brandon?
Stabeno's thing. You know, the General Motors has reopened the Factory Zero assembly plant in Detroit. It comes after the site spent the last year and a half offline retooling to make electric vehicles. Previously known as Pole Town because it's in the Polish territory.
Hamtramck.
In the Polish
Know it well.
territory of Detroit. GM announced its plans to close it completely in 2018, and the facility was ultimately saved through collective bargaining with the UAW.
And General Motors is going to temporarily stop offering heated seats, one of the most popular options among vehicle buyers in many of its crossovers and all but the top-end trims of its full-size pickups starting next week. Because of the ongoing microchip shortage, affected vehicles will also not be built with ventilated seats or a heated steering wheel until chip supplies improve. But GM said it's able to reinstate 3 other features it previously eliminated to conserve chip supplies, including digital temperature displays in some pickup trucks. Changes are expected to remain in place through the 2022 model year. Buyers will receive credits of $150 to $500 as compensation, according to a letter, copy of which was obtained by Automotive News. Well, it's time now for a quick break, and we will be back with more of the In Wheel Time Car Show after this.
Hey, Houston, it's back! America's greatest hot rod tradition is on Thanksgiving weekend. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Autorama at the George R. Brown Convention Center. 4 days of hot rods, customs, classics, trucks, and performance cars featuring the ultimate lowrider showcase. Sponsored by Shorty's Hydraulics and the Traditional Rod Garage. Saturday only, it's the Tuner Galleria with 250 imports, JDM, and luxury cars, plus music and models. Autorama! It's so much more than a car show. On the celebrity stage, presented by Nick's Auto Repair and Classic Car Restoration, it's Chip Foose from TV's Overhauling on Friday and wrestling superstar Sting on Sunday. Shop the swap meet and women's world all weekend. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Autorama. November 25th to 28th at the George R. Brown Convention Center. Discount tickets at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Part of the Summer Racing Equipment Show Car Series. See Autorama.com.
Tailpipes and Tacos, Houston's premier monthly cruise-in, will return Saturday, December 18th to the Lupi Tortilla Tex-Mex in Katy. Tailpipes and Tacos wants to thank all of the participants and fans who've enjoyed the collector cars, hot rods, customs, originals, and resto mods, and everything in between. We'll be taking a break for Thanksgiving and Autorama, but we'll be back for a great Christmas cruise-in on December 18th, so make plans now. You know that Tailpipes and Tacos is the Houston area's coolest cruise-in, a place you'll see friends, family, and the finest cruise-in cars in the Houston area. It all happens at the Lupi Tortilla Tex-Mex in Katy on the Grand Parkway at Kingsland Boulevard, just south of I-10. Get your ride ready for a very special Christmas cruise-in, Lupi style. It's Tailpipes and Tacos, Saturday, December 18th. The In Wheel Time Car Talk Show will be there too. Let's celebrate the Christmas season together at the next Tailpipes and Tacos on December 18th. We'll see you then, weather permitting. Gulf Coast Auto Shield has moved to a more convenient location. Now you can visit John Gray and his staff of dedicated professionals at their new shop on the South Sam Houston Parkway between Belford and Airport in Southwest Houston. Gulf Coast Auto Shield is the best at paint correction and ceramic coatings. Clear bras and custom wraps are specialties that only Gulf Coast Auto Shield installs with award-winning accuracy, and all their services come with a warranty. Lamborghini, Aston Martin, Porsche, and Ferrari owners depend on Gulf Coast Auto Shield for their specialty services, and you should too. The in-wheel time Corvette and Cutlass have both been massaged by Gulf Coast Auto Shield, so isn't it time your vehicle visit their new shop in Southwest Houston? Call John Gray today at 832-930-5655 or visit online at gcautoshield.com. That's gcautoshield.com. Paint, coatings, wraps, and more at gcautoshield.com. That's it for this podcast episode of the In-Wheel Time Car Show. I'm Don Armstrong, inviting you to join us for our live show every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our InWheelTime.com website. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Podcast, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Keep listening, and we'll see you soon.